Great. Then we start with a short, very, very brief introduction. Thank you very much for joining this session. And today I have a colleague from our company with me, Patricia.
Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you.
So today we will start about, stakeholder management, and because we both experienced that it's extremely important when, when you work with teams and in a huge company, and you have thousands of people who are somehow involved in a business, in a project, and so we thought about how can you make it better, and especially in a solution-focused way. And as you probably know, it's not only me who invented it. I got all this input from Alan, from John, from Mark, from Niklas, and Susanne, and many, many other coaches also. I got some input from Jesper, as far as I remember. So there are many coaches who were involved in this. And before we start, I think what makes sense is that we just talk about the best hopes from this workshop. And shall we go in breakout rooms for a couple of minutes and just see what you expect from this workshop and how it can be useful for you? Do it like this.
We do have our 8 participants, Stefan.
Yes. 4 breakout rooms.
Okay, cool.
I'll stop sharing. And you can just put in the chat, so we have already captured this information, and then we can go back to that one. I can share, why we do it, why we do the breakout sessions. Usually when we work with also with stakeholders, by the way, we stay the same way. So we do breakout sessions. What are your best hopes from the session? Because there are good reasons for that, doing that. I mean, you know that, sometimes, they're a little bit grumpy, the stakeholders. And usually people stay, especially in our business, where we think, usually about software projects, merger and acquisition, all these projects, what we have. You have thousands of people who are somehow involved, but none of them, would say really how they can work together. So this is how we usually start, that we try to find a way how to cultivate this kind of relationship which is needed. And Patricia, maybe you can also share a couple of ideas and maybe a little bit of your background, what you have with stakeholders, because I think this is quite interesting for that.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. So I have
I don't know where the mute button is.
2 jobs actually at SAP. That's our company, a global IT company that spans around the globe, 120,000 employees, and in many projects we work across continents, across time zones, and we have constantly new stakeholders in merger and acquisition projects. And very often we do not really know them. So that's one thing that we need to learn. Who are all the people, who are all the stakeholders in that system who need to be heard, who need to be respected, and who themselves have an interest in the outcome of the project. And what we see here on the slide is exactly what happens if you're not dealing well with them, if you're not creating useful, helpful relationships with them. It may be that you simply neglect the need of certain people. For instance, directly impacted employees who might wonder with an acquisition, for instance, if we acquire this new company, what about my job? They're doing a similar thing that what I do. So they need to be prepared in a good way. But you have similar concerns also at executive or leaders level, and they all want to be taken by the hand along such a project. And I think what Stefan and I try to show you today is how this can be done in a collaborative, solution-focused and structured way.
Yeah.
Stefan, any additional things, knowing my work, your work, that you'd like to add here?
No, I think that's perfectly described, and this was the reason why I thought about it. And I mean, we know that stakeholder management is quite popular, I would say. You know, when you think of all the consulting companies, then they talk about stakeholder management, but we do it slightly different. And the difference makes the difference. So what usually happens that people say they have to manage stakeholders. I will show this later. You manage people, you know, you have to know to attract them. And we all know that this doesn't work. So what is really important was is overseen many, many times to start with the end. So what I do is to create a preferred future for them. You know, I said we do it jointly. So suppose the project, for example, works exceptionally well. We all know this question in the solution-focused way. And they have to describe it in a positive, realistic, concrete, observable way with the same team, same resources, same customers. That's already a big challenge many times, because when we ask them, you know, how should it look like, they don't have an answer. And it's not only for them to find an answer, you would not believe it, but it's true, that this happens. It also helps to identify the stakeholders which you need to be successful in your project. And to do this, we start usually, and I can show this how to do it in a hybrid environment. If all the people are in a room, it's fairly easy. So you just take sticky notes and you just, you know, think about names after you have created the preferred future jointly. So you say, you know, who are the stakeholders who are relevant for this project in either way. So collect them. Usually you have many people, but I recommend to focus on the top 10 people who have been identified. But at first, let them, let's say, you know, collect whatever they think. And then as a next step, you use a matrix which is quite popular. And the reason why I do that is because people who are not, let's say, familiar with the solution-focused way, they know the matrix. All of them, especially, you know, in an IT company, that's quite famous, power of influence, interest. And then you have this matrix, which is used by many consultants. You have to keep them satisfied, who have a lot of power but low interest. If they have no power, you don't monitor them. You monitor them if they have no interest. If they have a high interest but no power, you keep them informed. And then they say to manage them. Manage, you know. And most of the time, this is where the stakeholder management, they talk about stakeholder management stops. Manage them closely. Of course, we know that change is happening all the time. One thing, so it's not, maybe it's just for a blink of a second, true, and then it changes already. That's one thing. The other thing is that it's not the people by itself. It's about
That's all
relations.
right.
Okay, any questions? Or? Yeah, okay. And so what we do is we just let them, let's say, post the names in those quadrants, which is an excellent starting point. And also based on my experience, I can say, yes, the board members, very important. They're very interested. They have a lot of influence, so you put them here. As I said, I don't change these names because they know this matrix, so they're familiar. We just use this one. But what we do then, as a next step, we transfer those names usually to a sheet with solution-focused questions. So what we do is we have the names here, you know, and then ask the question, relationship. 10, it couldn't be better. 0 is, it couldn't be worse. You know this one. What is good enough? Typically scaling question. Then a question which is not solution focused, but extremely helpful. I ask them, how much time do you spend with the stakeholder? And then they realize many times that they spend 0 minutes with the stakeholder. For example, with the board member, with managers who are very high in the hierarchy. So of course, you as a project manager, you believe that you should spend time with them and it's important for them. But then you realize that many times you don't spend any time with them. And of course, then we ask questions, well, what did you do so far to improve? So think about the resources, what you have, and then about next steps and what difference would that make? This matrix can be adapted in any way. So we will talk about this also later. It's just key to say, okay, you know, how's the relationship? What are the resources, what you had? What are small steps? What difference would it make? And then you will see that it's not about a single person. It's about the relationship which comes between those people who are the stakeholders. We can do a breakout session also in a group. How many people are in the session?
We now have 12 people in the session.
Sessions, you know, so 4 people or something like this. You know, can you think of how you can apply it in your area? And also what the benefits are there. Maybe you did it already, number one, or maybe you can think of how you can use that. And to share your experience and to share also with the coaches what could be useful for that. Would this be a good way of doing it? Shall we try it out?
Yeah.
Maybe for 10 minutes, after 5 minutes, we will just check, you know. Please make notes in the chat so you can easily copy it then later if you want. And let's do it.
Okay, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Off you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were wondering if you would like to share here a little bit in the plenary what you've discussed in your meeting rooms, and then our offer would be that I share a story of my life at SAP where it didn't work so well. But I think we first wanted to hear what you've discussed in the breakout sessions, and then I'll tell my story and see what we can learn from it. So who would like to share what's being discussed?
I think one of the points from our discussion, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's also about visibility.
Mm-hmm.
You can have some stakeholder who are very, very far away, and you would like to be more visible to these stakeholder in order to get a good relationship, and that they also get a better understanding of what you or your team are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And also from our group here, we've got 3 experiences. One, in my country, South Africa, where I am, in my area, we are in the mining industry. They want to develop a housing development project,
Mm-hmm.
but it has stalled because the company had its own preferred stakeholders and excluded other other stakeholders. So there is
Mm-hmm.
no movement at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
And also we have learned that like in Malaysia, one of our colleagues, as the stakeholders, they came together, they had a dialogue. From that dialogue, they established their own preferred ways within the projects for collaboration and relationships. And out of that, they managed to get values. So it is like answering the question, what is your best hope out of this process?
Mm-hmm.
that question has been asked. And the last experience is that of also having similar conversations to engage more and to build trust and relationship. And how do you do that? Stakeholders, you ask the stakeholders to state also how do they differ from other people? How do they see themselves different from other people in order to build that trust and relationship? Yes, that's all from our small group, and then they can also add.
Thank you, David.
Stefan,
Yeah.
I trust you. Add. Yes.
I think, Patricia, it fits nicely to your story, I think.
Oh, totally, totally. I feel so comfortable not being alone in this spot. Do we want to hear another voice from the breakout sessions?
One addition from my side, so also this stakeholder matrix that we see on the screen, this is designed from the perspective of somebody in a position of power, which means this is a project manager, this is a line manager, this is a sponsor. What we discussed within our breakout session was how to create also this bottom-up stakeholder management.
What do you mean by that? Do you have an example?
So let's say you're a subject matter expert and you want to be taken seriously when a big project is coming. But because there are so many other stakeholders, a little bit like the visibility that Jesper talked to, but how to, how to identify and make yourself heard as a stakeholder, although maybe the sponsor or the project management, maybe they don't see you.
Yep. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. Anything else? Patricia, do you wanna share your story quickly?
Yes, I'm happy to.
The same thing.
How many minutes do I get?
Yeah, let's start with 5. I think 5 minutes is a good.
Okay. You need to give me a sign, because when I'm getting on a roll, then I'm on a roll in
Okay,
telling
then I just
my story.
this,
Wonderful, Stefan. Good. All right. So maybe again, as an introduction for those who joined a little later, I'm a colleague of Stefan, and my role in our company is I'm responsible to lead the communication, and partially that's also change management activities for our mergers, acquisitions, and also the divestitures. So divestitures is when we carve out a business area from our company into another company, or perhaps, or sometimes into a joint venture. These are usually, when we look at, when we understand that in these projects, it's all about people. Whereas it seems like, there's a perspective, this is about the share price. But actually, when you look at what is happening there, it's about people that are impacted by such a transaction, and who have a strong, or not so strong, but who definitely have an interest in the outcome of such a transaction. And you do have all sorts of stakeholders there. My role is, and when we consider this, when we say, okay, this is about a change in the organization, then we also understand 80% of the change is communications. How do we talk to the people? How do we listen to the people? How do we interact with the people? How do we drive dialogue? So this is how I'm involved, and why thinking about stakeholders and working with the stakeholder matrix in the way how Stefan described it to us is a very, very, very useful tool. And I would have been super happy if I'd known for a certain project from the structured approach that Stefan has shared with us. So what was the situation? That's the story now. We were at a point where we needed to plan for the first announcement that we want to move one part of our organization into a joint venture organization. And that's not an easy one because we already understood that the impacted employees who would need to move into that new organization would probably not be overly happy. Some might be very welcoming the change and the opportunities, etc. But we also understood that there will be some resistance, certainly disappointment there. I'm not talking of the concerns that customers might have or partners that we work with, executives, etc. And as you hear, I'm already listing different groups of stakeholders, such as impacted employees, impacted customers. But there's also the general public who wonders, hey, what's SAP doing there? Are there divesting, and where's this joint venture? Will that be in Germany, or is SAP making a move out of Germany? What does that mean? And we also know that media always have an interest in us. So I'm already mentioning here a number of stakeholders, and then there's another group of stakeholders, and that's more on an individual level. That's, for instance, executives. So what we've done was we went through all these stakeholders in a smaller communications team to understand what is it, how do we need to communicate to them, where do we need to set up information sessions with a question and answers part in it, all sorts of things like that. What happened? And usually we believe we know who is the system, who are the stakeholders, how are they related to such a project, and how are they related, and what interest would they have in the outcome of such a project. And we didn't do it along the stakeholder matrix. And we didn't do it, and we realized at a certain point that we did not think of a very important stakeholder at executive level, and we simply neglected that person. So what happened then was, and this person was very important because about 10 years ago, this person was responsible for that business area. So this person has just got a new boss, and this new boss was an executive board member, so very high up there. So this person had, for two reasons, a desire to shine and to be appreciated. A, for how this person has contributed, that this business area got a certain status in the market, was successful. And this person also wanted to shine towards this new boss, be part of this project, to be able to say at the end of the day, hey, because of me, this project was very well managed. So there's also kind of a hidden agenda. And this person was obviously also in close relationship, partially informal relationship, network, Old Boys Network, for instance. And in this way also influential for the outcome of that project. Because one element of the goal was that we wanted everybody, really all stakeholders, to say at the end of the day, this was a very well managed project. I really felt well communicated to. I felt heard. I felt acknowledged in my needs. And I also felt that me as an important stakeholder in this, I had in a certain way a say. I was asked to shape, to help with that. So in this way, we neglected this stakeholder, and we could have done better if we as a project team, together with, for instance, the business leaders of this business area, would have gotten together in a workshop session kind of thing, taken this matrix and said, okay, so who are the people that will really need to keep satisfied? That they really say, okay, yes, the type of communication, the way how you talk to me, the way, the frequency, how often I'm invited to a question and answer session, where can I bring up my feedback? This is really good. So then we had keep satisfied. That's employees, but that's also executives who say, yeah, this is going the right way. I have my expectations towards this project. This is going the right way. Then you also need to manage certain people closely and manage, I think, collaborate closely is probably in a solution-focused paradigm the better way to say, because when you say we collaborate with you, with those most important people in the top right box that we see here, then you also understand that these people have obviously an impact on the people that we might put in those three other boxes. They can be multipliers. They have their informal networks where they talk about the project. So these are the people that you really want to collaborate very closely with. And we could have put this person exactly into that box. And if we would have done, this person would have been more than happy to be very supportive for a positive outcome of the entire project. But because we didn't do it and neglected this person, and simply because we've not really done our homework, we missed that opportunity, and it took us really a long time to repair that relationship, because it was a broken relationship in the end. To repair that relationship with that person, and to repair, in a sense, the relationship of that person to the project. Yeah. Because relationships is usually between people, but in this way we can say the relationship to that project. And because there's always a second goal after something. So if you would, for instance, ask this person, so what does it mean for the project or for such projects in general that we included this person? The answer would probably be this person will promote the way how we're doing acquisitions, integrations, that carve-outs, that we're doing this in a good way, and they would advocate for these transactional project teams that they're doing a good job. So on the long run, they would even help us open doors. Mm-hmm. Right? So there's so when you do this properly, what I'm saying is it's not only beneficial for the project at hand, but there's usually a long-term benefit also when you do it properly. Yeah. So I think I stop here now.
Yes, I think thank you very much, Patricia, for sharing this, because I think it's pretty easy to, let's say, to do it in a slightly different way, which works much better. And shall I share it right now, how it works? And you can do it even in a hybrid environment. This is usually also a topic when you work with people that not everybody's available. So I did something, and I just jumped to the slides. You've seen those slides before. I said, now how can you do it in a hybrid environment? Any one of you is working in a hybrid environment already? I think almost everybody is doing that. Okay, then I share my screen. Do you see my mural? Yeah, you see my mural? Okay, remove this one. So can you see it? Yeah, I think you can. Yeah. So what Patricia explained.
Sorry, we make it bigger or bring it lower.
Yes,
so that,
yeah. So as I said before, we start with the preferred outcome, with the preferred future. And what usually happens also, at first you have a short description here for those people who want to read it, you know, how to do such a stakeholder. People call it still analysis. It's up to you how you call it, because people are used to that. But what is important is what we did in the project I'm talking, we did exactly this. What are the best hopes? We identified the stakeholders. We gave them a little, let's say, description, what works quite good. And they said, okay, now suppose this project works exceptionally well. How would you notice that? Does it look from 1 year from now? And they decided to define KPIs, which is also fine. As in solution focused, we don't need KPIs, but if they want to do that and they agree on those, that's fine. Internal, external stakeholders, as we said before, and the beauty about this one is, and there are other tools, you can simply move them from one to the other one. You know, so at first identify them. All the people can work in parallel, and as I said, some of them can sit in the office working on the laptop, and some of them can dial in from any place in the world and do that. And then we move on, make it a little bit smaller. So we go to the matrix, that's the first step. And as I said, usually people stop here. Sometimes they don't even do that. But then to transfer those names to this sheet where you say, how is the relationship? What would be better? And so on and so forth. This makes the difference. And we had exactly the same, we made the same experience, because what people say usually when, for example, you have a good relationship already with somebody, you know, what could you do? And people say nothing, which is not true. The question is, how can you use these people as promoters? So you have a positive gossiping. You know, how, especially when you have some of the stakeholders who are not so convinced, how can they promote your project? And for this, we have a couple of, let's say, questions prepared. And the question is, we have now about half an hour left. What is the best use of time? Yeah.
Can I just interrupt you? Because I think it's so super important what you just said, and answers one of the questions that came out of the breakout session. And that was, how can such a matrix help me when I'm not in such a powerful position to talk to or to influence certain, let's say, higher ups, right? And I can totally, when I heard you, I can totally relate to that. And Stefan just said it. It's about positive gossiping, and it's about leveraging and identifying those people who can influence people that you do not, as a project member, that you do not have that influence to. And when you start thinking, and this is, for instance, also those people that can go, when you identify them who can speak for you, and when you identify them as important people in that top right box, closely, manage closely, or better to say collaborate closely. Stefan, I think we should change the name afterwards. At least I will do for my projects. But when you put them there, and this is what I've really learned from Stefan's approach here, then you get a newer, you get this more solution focused thinking, and you immediately think, okay, from all the people that we have here in our system, in the stakeholder system, who can be used as an advocate, as a promoter. And sometimes it's only through the process that your unconscious knowledge about who these people are becomes transparent. And then sometimes it becomes very easy in influencing those higher ups that you usually don't have a direct access to. I needed to say this, Stefan, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think this is all the discussion what Dorothy had and the group in the breakout room, you know, how to influence them. And don't be afraid of the big animals. You know, sometimes, yes, of course, although the big animals, and this is also one of the reasons why, I don't know if it's the reason, but I can remember when I was quite young as an assistant to a director. And you know, you have business cases and you have to get the signature from the board member to release the money. And if you go to the board member directly, they would say, no time, I have thousands of other things to do. So what do? You have a good relationship to the secretary, to the assistants of those people, and they trust you. And they know when you provide a business case, when you know, and they know it's not nonsense. There are no mistakes in it. It's good prepared. After a short while, they will find those 5 minutes. And I mean, that's quite obvious. If they don't know you, you send them 50 pages, you know, many numbers, a huge amount of money, and tell them, now please sign here. This doesn't work. But just to find those people in the organization who, you know, can you use to achieve your best hopes. This is extremely useful, and it's also, by the way, a lot of fun. And you meet many people, you know, you wouldn't even have thought of who can help you. Shall we do, how shall we do it? We have two versions now, or two options, or two versions.
I think, Stefan, we got to the point where you already said it's thinking about making friends. And I think making friends means very often also, when I need this person, for instance, that secretary, how can I be useful to that person? So that's a mutual thing in this friendship.
Always,
and I think that's the question now,
yes.
Right?
Yeah, always on eye level. As we do in SF in coaching, we communicate on eye level. You know, no matter which you know, title they have or whatever. But of course, I think our solution-focused stance is extremely useful in doing that. Yeah, I agree. Patricia, what? Let's ask Eva, Niklas. I mean, we have two things. What shall we do? I mean, we have a list of questions which are also useful. Do you want to discuss those questions, or do you want to go in breakout rooms? What would you prefer? Just give me any idea.
I think that might be useful to go through those questions.
Yeah, to the questions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and please think of additional questions. You know, you could think of. So let me.
Yeah, sorry, Stefan.
Yeah.
I've put on the chat box there, because what we heard from Patricia is that there was ego, that is hidden agenda, from the project champion, and then there were ethics also in question, because people did not know the motive, and there was a an influential power that was excluded. So my question is, what SF questions can we ask to avoid this, or to make all this redundant? Because you are not delving into problems. You are not going to say this one is egoistic and is power hungry and so on. We simply have to ask questions that will move people away from their positions. What questions can we ask to break all those?
So let's do that. So very useful question, Apollo. Sorry. Here we go.
David, I think that is exactly what we wanted to do with all of us in the plenary now,
So,
like Dorothy suggested.
yeah. So, and please enter any questions in the chat. So what you can, in addition, think of. This is these are, let's say, starting questions. And this is also for people, who are not familiar with solution focus, to ask a very simple questions. What do they want? Sometimes it's not ask. What do they want in general? What do they want from the project? And this is our question where we suppose it's extremely useful. What difference would it make? What could they bring to the project if they support it? Suppose you can get their support. What would be the benefits to you, to them, to other stakeholders? Which other stakeholders are they connected with? If there's no connection, that might be a useful benefit as well. What are the connections you can think of? What do they have supported before? How do they like to work? And also a question, it's not a pure solution focused question, but what, if anything, might turn them off? And what are other questions you can think of? I just shall I put them in the chat? Those questions I can.
If we stay here in the plenary, I think then everybody can see the questions. Otherwise, I copy them out into the chat, Stefan.
Yeah, maybe that's what. Yeah. Can you think of other questions which might be useful to build a relationship? Other questions, building the relationship. Think of the project. What needs to go right? Yeah. Yeah. I think, yes, this is, as I said, not the solution-focused questions. It's you adapt it to the language of your clients. Sometimes something has to go wrong. This. By the way, Niklas wrote a fantastic article in High Five about working with employees and so on. So that's exactly what this is. Yeah. So thank you, Patricia.
Yeah, the other question is, how would you make sure that there are how would you make sure that everybody supports the project, or how would you make sure that the project is successful? I'm trying to look at the resource.
Yeah. What else do we have?
Who else will be happy if the project is successful? Who else?
Yeah. Also, very good question.
And David, the what else question is so super helpful, especially in this first phase when you wonder who are all stakeholders that you need to think of in this project, for instance. So this repeating question and who else? It really helps you, like in a brainstorming session, right? You always do two rounds, and the second round goes to your deeper knowledge about something. So it's super helpful. Yeah.
Yes.
And once
who else is not here? Yeah. Who else still needs to be here? Yeah. That's good.
And if this person would be here, what is this person good at? Also, sometimes when we have, let's say, some negative thoughts about a person, we think, oh, this, but sometimes what is this person good at? And this changes totally, and when you have identified it, you have a grumpy person thinking maybe, but this person is excellent in whatever. This is a different story. Or how does this person benefit from the project? Have a guess.
Yes. Yes.
What would be a win-win situation for both stakeholders? What else could be a good question?
Yeah.
Anything else? Dorothy, anything else you can think of?
No, I can't come up with anything else at the minute. We seem to have some good ones there.
Niklas, from your side? Or David?
Stefan, I think the basis of our questions is to be able to fit a stakeholder into any of those 4 quadrants. Which one to monitor. I mean, we need to be able to differentiate so that we can map them on that grid. The questions must lead us into that. What do you think?
Yes and no. I say yes because this is how usually people think. Put people in quadrants. In solution focused, we never put people in quadrants. We never say that the person is like this. On the other hand, it's useful because people know the quadrants. So, this person does not have a lot of influence. Not interested. I think that's okay. That's good enough. If it helps for them, it's good enough. The point is that never leave the people there. You could have a reorganization in the company, and then suddenly who has no power has a lot of power. So to be flexible, to see how change is happening all the time, and it's also an ongoing topic. Think about where do we stand? How do these relationships work? What could be done slightly different? What could work better? And some people might drop off the list, of course, people leaving the company or whatever. And so, as I said, to have a starting point, also like Patricia said, it's good to think about people who have a lot of power, who have a lot of influence and interest in the project. But it's about relationships, moving, starting point and then to move on. And I did risk management for many, many years. And what I have learned, risk management for development projects, people usually identify thousands of risks in a project. But if they do not manage the top 3 risks they have identified, the project will fail. So they don't have to take care about the other ones. And many times, I think it's the same with stakeholders that, you have to identify those people who really help you to be successful. And to check who is it, who can make the difference. Well, maybe you've experienced this already in your company, that sometimes you have key people. I can remember I was part of a consulting project many, many years ago, and we had one he was a leader of a department. It was not very big, actually, maybe 100 people. And this was the key person. And when this person was not in the room, nothing happened. No progress. I mean, in this case, it was quite obvious, then, but you don't identify these people who can help you to make progress. Now I stopped talking. I could talk for hours. So,
I think you raised an important point, Stefan, here, because you talked about initially doing it and then observing your stakeholders over time. And I think coming back to my example with this neglected executive. So the good news was that we could repair the relationship with that person. It took, I don't know, X amount of efforts, but we got there. And then you could see how this person got, when we stay in, with the idea of these 4 helpful quadrants, who only help us structure a little bit how we can, deal with different, let's say, types of stakeholders. You could see that the needs, but also the expectations of this executive changed, and that at a certain point, it wasn't necessary anymore to watch the space and closely monitor or closely collaborate with the person, because the person, because it wasn't needed anymore. Because you've established a relationship where that person more moved to a point that they needed to be well informed, but not that closely being interacted with as it was initially. So that can change over time as well. And we're using now the metrics, for instance, to work with the leadership team often, and work in 2 ways with them. We look at, okay, the stage where we are now in the project, who needs what in terms of who are our stakeholders that we've identified, and what are we doing at the moment, and do we still do the right things, or does it make sense to change direction, change the approach at certain points. So it's very helpful to also ask yourself over time again, using the matrix, how this is helpful, and then certainly applying these useful questions that we've just been discussing.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all what I could share. Last question. Anything which was a golden nugget for you? Maybe just a very small one. Nuggets can be extremely small. What was there, which was something where I said, okay, this was somehow useful. Bit of harvesting. Who would like to start?
I think the main little nugget I can think of is the idea of finding different ways of connecting with people, and being quite creative with that in quite challenging situations.
I like the fact that you can also, I don't believe you can only use it if you're in a position of power. I think, and when we talked about this visibility, it's equally fruitful to use this. yeah, think about creative ways of how to improve your visibility.
To your point, Eva, the way how we transformed this approach a little later than in the change process, and to help the people managers in this carve out, was we started working more closely with them. We understood that they have a very important role in guiding their teams through that change. So what we did was we offered them a little bit in a different way, guiding questions in the sense of this matrix, and with those solution-focused questions, so that they for themselves can reflect how they can best guide their teams, looking at, you know, who are the ones who promote, who really see the benefit of the change, but then also looking at those who are really, really skeptical and concerned and are worried that they would lose from the change, from the transaction. And then, you know, also asking the manager themselves, so, and what are your resources, and who's important in the system to you, who could help you? So in this way, we developed the approach even further. And right to your point, these people, depending on your perspective, are not necessarily the higher ups, but are the people who drive the change or not, right? Yeah, thank you.
Any harvesting remarks from David or Stella? David?
No, this was a very informative session, but that slide on hybrid, the hybrid slide, I couldn't see it. I wonder if I can request that you circulate all the slides out prepared after this session, so that I can go, because I'm facing an issue here of a project that is deadlocked because of the stakeholders issue.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
reach out and send an email, and then of course we will share the slides anyway. So, you know, happy to support.
Yes. Okay, thanks.
And David, if you like, we can also do a peer-to-peer discussion and consultation about your project. I feel we're a little bit in the same boat.
Okay, I'll send you in my email. Okay.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Stella, any?
Very insightful sections. Thank you.
I like your avatar, Stella.
Really?
Yes, yes. So creative.
Okay, great. Would it be okay for you to close the session?
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, then we would like to say thank you, Patricia.
Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you both.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.